Really?
We really enjoyed
Okay.
it.
All right.
It's
Well,
ephemeral.
I'll put subtitles or something.
Voice acting.
So we had the first video where it was me and Kevin just like trying to fix the AV, and then the screen froze. You saw it, right?
I watched that one.
So clearly we're learning our ropes as as a meetup, but we'll get better. Okay. So all right. So introducing SSG. I'm Swyx, Sean, and yeah. So the whole thing of the whole explanation of this is why Sapper isn't good enough with a nice big X for for what it is. And so let's explain a little bit. I have no idea what people's levels are. Have people used Sapper? Know what Sapper is? Who doesn't know what Sapper is? Yeah. Okay. A few. Okay. So there's Svelte, which is the framework that compiles on the component level, and then there's Sapper, which is the server-side rendering sort of wrapper around all of this, and it works on a recommended structure, which is available in the Sapper template repo. And the way, I mean, obviously we care about server-side rendering for SEO and performance. The way that Sapper works is that a viewer comes in, makes a request to the server knows how to route it or accordingly. Then it prefetches that data. That's obviously very important if you want to pre-render anything, right? So it prefetches that data, then it renders the page, and then it sends the page back out to the user. So that's the rough flow, and that's fine for a server app, like like Sapper's whole goal is to be a Next.js clone, right? From the React ecosystem. So that's fine for a server rendered app, but it's not so fine for static sites, and that's something that I care about. That's given where I work, and so Sapper has a static export mode, which is kind of like a second thought, like an afterthought, like it's kind of slapped onto this because theoretically, if you have that server flow, then the only thing you need to do for static export of files, which means no running server. You export everything to HTML files and JS files, and then you host it up on a wonderful service, which you can pick on your own accord. And the idea is simplicity, right? So to layer on static export, the only thing you need to do is have the save and crawl extra functionality on there. So you have that running server going on, and then you have an entry point for requests. You go through all of that, you generate the page, then you crawl through the generated page for other links, and then you just crawl and crawl and crawl and crawl to the rest of your site. Yeah? And that way you generate this map of your entire site and export individual files for every single one of them. And this way you can when your user hits that page, they can hydrate and all that. I trust that you get it. Okay, so because I don't have time to explain more, but definitely come up to me afterwards if you have questions. Okay, so the first thing I ran into when starting to explore Sapper for static export is this race condition. I have reported it. Basically, the idea is that different parts, like that flow seems to make sense until you actually figure out that parts of these move at different speeds. So the requests are very cheap to fire off, but saving actually gets bottlenecked. And Sapper kills itself or terminates its process. Let's not use that word. But Sapper terminates the process once all the requests have been fired. Unfortunately, saving takes a bit more time to save. So me and a couple other, like we're trying to push static export up to a few tens of thousands of pages. You get into this situation where you fired off all the requests and you terminate the process, but you still have some pages left to save, and the process is terminated, so it just doesn't save anything. So you're left with incomplete data. So we have an issue there, and there's a PR. That's the first issue. The second issue is also the bottleneck with the prefetch. Basically, that's a very expensive operation. You're going out to the network. You're consuming API calls. Some of these things are consuming headless CMS. Like you have rate limits on these things. You can't make an API call every single time you're hitting one of your sites, and a lot of the ways that a lot of the demo examples basically hit an index and then search through the index and then search and then get more details on that particular item within that index. So that's reasonably slow. This is fixable. Basically, split it up. You do a pre-run step at the start. Get all the index data, save it on disk or something, and then it's slightly cheaper to prefetch the data. Obviously, you can only move things around. You can't really sort of decrease things, but you can definitely reduce duplication by shifting all indexing up front. There's the other thing about the file structure. So the recommended file structure is that you're co-locating your data endpoints alongside of the Svelte pages that will be consuming them. This isn't a hard requirement, so there are ways to fix that. But I did find this a little bit of boilerplate to work with. So that was a bad slide. So as I was sort of working through this, I actually wrote a blog post about this, and I called it "Bad Ways to Get Data." And this is more just like brainstorming because the whole premise was that Sapper was supposed to be extremely fast at server rendering, right? Like it's a template language. You're just concatenating strings. And it's supposed to be really, really fast. And I found it like 100 times slower than Gatsby. So I was trying to figure out why that was. And so I was kind of working through the math. Actually, even worse. Yeah, no. Well, no. Anyway, I don't know what the math was, but and then apart from the data workflow, I also had issues with the boilerplate. Sapper's Svelte's whole motto is do more with less code, and there is a lot of boilerplate in the default Sapper structure. So I was like, there's an opportunity to get rid of that. So that's the premise I approached SSG with. It's right now it's a zero config Sapper overlay, specifically focused on the problem of static export. It ships some default rollup plugins just because it's zero config, right? So let's just move the defaults a little bit towards what people want to use. So I add pre-processing in, which means you can use TypeScript in your script, as well as MBX and these specs because of Penguin. And ejectable defaults, we'll talk a little bit about that, and then reusable data plugins. So these are the standard things that you want to see in a static site generator. I recently learned how to name squat on NPM, so it actually is NPM, the SSG package on NPM. Okay, so regarding this boilerplate thing, you can actually just reduce a lot of defaults and subsume it all under a single dependency, and that's the SSG dependency right there. So that you only work on your code, right? And the stuff that you want to customize, you eject, and then you shadow that. So this is very, very similar philosophy going on in Gatsby, and I think it should be more prevalent in a lot of our tooling. Like you're not doing anything special, don't have the code, right? That's a very simple principle. Okay, so this is where we had the live demo. I broke my own demo because I've been working on this thing, and this is a foreign laptop. But I have stuff running, and we'll see how far we can get. Okay, but no promises. Okay, so the what? So my work laptop is in the shop because the hard drive crashed. So this is actually Oleg's laptop. Yeah. All right. So also, ooh, nice. Okay. So, oh dear. Okay. I'm trying to like I always try to make an emphasis that like I'm starting from complete scratch. So I just created a meetup repo, right? I'm gonna cd into that meetup repo, and I'm going to open it up with code. And I just like, to me, this is the ideal sort of developer experience, and it's something that I happen to work on daily. So I just, God, all the shortcuts on my computer isn't working.
That's spectacle if you use spectacle.
Got it. Sorry, I already took over your system. Okay. So empty folder. Everyone's familiar with this. Should I switch to a light theme? Are people okay with this? Let me try, because I've been told that light theme is usually like the best, especially for a demo. Yeah. All right. What?
Very bright.
That's too bright.
I'll adjust it.
Well, no, it's fine. Okay. Sorry. I mean, okay. Stress out. All right, I'm stressing myself out for no good reason. Okay, actually, I'm gonna sit because there's no point me standing. So I'm gonna yarn. So the first thing is yarn init dash y, yarn add ssg. So that's the SSG folder, and it comes with some defaults that you'll probably want to have in a static site. So I've just kind of bundled this in. So it is heavier than a regular Svelte app. I should probably work on that as well. But right now it's an overlay over a Sapper, and eventually the goal is to actually get rid of Sapper, if it's worth it. I'm not sure yet. So single dependency, that's the idea, and there are two commands that you want to run, which is a script, which is npm scripts. I hope people can see this. Okay. So start. It's ssg dev, and then ssg export for the build. You do have spectacle. Build. Okay. And so the basic idea is that this is a zero config Sapper overlay, right? So I should be able to specify my source, my routes, and say index.svelte. And say, do you have your, ooh, look at that. No. Hello world. Booyah. Actually, let's put in some sveltiness. Why not? Script. Let text equals to svelte society, and then yeah. So people are familiar with this mode of development. I really like the authoring experience just because it really feels like you're writing regular HTML except for the templating bit. Okay, so moment of truth. Okay. So I did not manage to rip out the config. So I have a config, but I assume the config everywhere I go. But I'm just gonna let it be empty right now. This worked in my previous option click. Hey! Right, so for nothing, you get you just write your code, right? Single dependency, and you get that experience. So I think this is the kind of developer experience we want to slowly move the ecosystem towards. And then let's get a little bit more going. So we have okay, well, so there is an ejecting system. So yarn ssg eject, and this gives you a bunch of files that are being shadowed internally. Some of these are being shadowed, so there's a rollup configuration inside of there. There's a client.js, server.js. If you use Sapper, you'll be very familiar with all of these files. But what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna pick out some ssg specific files. So I'm gonna pick out this, and I think I'm happy with that. So that will copy it out and scaffold things. I'm also going to have a simple README. I don't know. Hello, Svelte Society. This is new text. I don't know. Whoop. Okay. Just to show you it's marked down. And heck it, why not? Let's have some code in there. Console log. What? Okay, so I'm gonna get rid of this index.svelte that we had before, and I'm gonna rename this to sample index.svelte. Let's look at what other changes I've done over here. So this is the scaffolded component that I had, and the only difference. Your shortcuts are different from mine. The only thing different. So I forked Sapper to add this component. So Sapper has a this.fetch method to go fetch data in the preload section. And remember in that diagram I showed you, I wrote a simple little overlay over that fetch method, so to restrict what you can do, so you can only fetch data from SSG. So here we're going to fetch the default data. By default, gets the SSG core data. The core data plugin basically just goes through and looks for anything marked down and just consumes it as data and processes it for you. So I just wanted this to be zero config. Like originally this lived as a separate plugin that you have to set up by yourself, but I was just like, screw it, I'll just provide it for you. And we're just going to request the index by default. If we wanted to request anything special, for example, like on this details page, we can request the ID by the slug of that ID. Okay, so I think this is runnable. Let's try. So what this does is it goes through, sets up that data pipeline that I talked about, goes and the core data plugin goes through for all the README files in your project, and then exposes it. So let's see what this looks like. So I've basically just logged it out over here, and that's an indication of what the index is. The idea for me, I'm not sure. I'm not 100% sure about this one, but basically, the idea is that indexes should be easy to query, and then the details can be as expensive as you want. So I had a very so and this is relevant here because when I'm processing this README file not only has markdown processing, but also has code in here. And I added some extra niceties to add syntax highlighting to this code. And that actually takes a lot more processing time. So you do not want to do this all the way up front because that would just make your processing time very, very slow. And it's hard to parallelize. You want to have a cheap index, and then you want to have each individual request perform that work so you can parallelize and you can defer that work as well. So the big reveal, I guess, is if I go to /readme. Let's see if I can fix this over here. I'm not 100% confident, but let's see what the error message is. No file for README found. What are you talking about?
Is it because it's not lowercase? Is the slug with lowercase in the JSON?
In the JSON it was lowercase? No, it's uppercase here. So one way to debug it, I'm still exposing this sort of data fetching thing, so you can actually do some console logging of the data fetching coming in and out. I'm just not really sure that. Let me see. It could be that, but I do look up by slugs. So I'm actually tempted to hide this inside of the default server that I provide. Oh, the slug is small lowercase. You're right. So clever. It's not even his thing, and he's already figured it out. README. Can you not lowercase it? Wait, what's?
Clear history.
It's not the end of the world if I don't figure this out. What? Okay, so how do I have to clear cache?
Put HTTP at the front.
Yay! With some I don't know why this happens. but the idea is no configuration. I have README transforming to data, being read out in a very flexible format in these pages. So that's the idea of a data pipeline on top of SSG, on top of Sapper. In future, it could be extended to other frameworks because why not? And there's a whole other there's other stuff going on as well. So what else I want to cover with you. So this is obviously in production in my own site, where this is, you can actually see how I use it for my own site. You have a question?
Can you just recap really quick that page? So this is a static file. This is a static file.
This?
Yeah. So this is just all rendered, like you source all there.
Yeah. How do I do this?
There's no API. There's no request going on or anything like that.
Yeah. See H1.
Yeah. Gotcha.
Although this is not the best. I mean, that doesn't. Yeah, this is the best tell that you can actually see everything in just the HTML request. Yeah, so I mean that's server rendering. That's the basic, and that's what you get from Sapper. So the base benefit is this is a zero config overlay over Sapper, And then the other thing is the data pipeline that I'm trying to demo here. It is available on my own site. So this is there's a plugin system. You can write your own plugins and make it more extendable. And this is how I made my own site. And I did the bulk of this work in September, and I basically run the whole thing on the standard sort of Netlify Jamstack manner. So that's pretty cool. The Svelte community site is also running on this as well, and you're welcome to come participate. And this is, by the way, a great way to learn about community stuff. So if you want to look at boilerplate code, I just went back for some reason. And the idea is this, right? This is all managed in a static file, but we can pipe it through JavaScript, and through JavaScript we can do dynamic elements as well. And that's the virtue of the whole new dynamic approach that we're all that me, Gerald, and Bud, and a bunch of other people here work on a daily basis. That there is no running server, it's cheap to host, and that's so on and so forth. Okay, so just to cap this off, because I feel like I've gone on long enough. The pipeline. I don't think it's ready for launch yet. I really want to get to a point of incremental builds. And this is the kind of the big kahuna of static site generators, where if you have a lot of sites, you're building every single page every single time, and that takes very long, it's expensive and slow. So you want to get to a point where if there's just you want to store the index, you diff the index, and then you only run the diff through the whole system. So it's theoretically possible, just no one's prioritized it. I might as well just prioritize that. And V1, I think I want to explore dropping Sapper, and part of this is the goal of delivering 0 kilobytes of JS for people who don't use it. I think that's something that Rich is interested in as well. I'm interested in reviving Sapper Studio to go along with this, because I think that's a really good authoring experience as well. I'm interested in going for speed. What I have, the index slice, data slice thing, is basically a shitty implementation of GraphQL, so I want to explore using GraphQL for that as well as full Alemany compatibility, because I'm like 90% there. And then in V2, I want to do other more advanced stuff that we don't have to talk about yet. But I want to use their plugins. Yeah, because why reinvent things? Yeah, and Zach Leatherman, who created Lemony, has expressed interest in adopting Svelte as one of the templating languages as well. So I don't know where that goes. We might merge, or we might just have different visions. We might just take some time to experiment. Sure. Yeah. I mean, absolutely. I think more people should experiment in this space. Honestly, I'm doing this because no one's done it yet, so I'm just kind of scratching my own itch. Also, it's just really cool to dig into Sapper's internals and fork it for yourself for your own needs. I think it's a great way to learn. All right, so yeah, npm install SSG. Thank you very much. Any questions? I can take.